Greetings, everyone. I'm Bishop James I. Clark, Jr. I'm the senior pastor of Christ Temple of the Apostolic Faith and presiding bishop of the Churches of our Lord Jesus Christ, and I have been asked to give a faith reflection as we commence this day of questions and answers that are so critical at this time when we're going to make some of the most important decisions we've made in a very long time.
So we're going to start with the opening question, and we're starting with Cordell Cleare. What is your legacy of service to Harlem? Why are you the best candidate for City Council? And what are your primary goals as City Council member for Harlem in the next 4 years? No more than 3 minutes for the response.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My legacy to Harlem is one of a resident and community organizer and advocate for over 25 years in this community. I served on the District 3 School Board for over 8 years and then on the Community Education Councils for another 2 years, advocating for better student outcomes for our children and making all schools quality schools, not just those below 110th Street and in other neighborhoods. I fought against co-locations and school closings in this district, fought for greater access to higher performing schools and equity among all of our schools in the district and citywide. I marched and advocated in support of the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, which would bring much needed funds to our district. As a tenant organizer, I participated in the tenant rights movement to protect rent stabilization laws and strengthen protections for children against lead poisoning, fought for repairs and stopped illegal evictions. I did 19 years of constituent services ranging from the uncovering of the HUD 203 case scandal, which began with an illegal eviction, all the way to fighting for justice for the wrongfully incarcerated and wrongfully harmed while incarcerated in this district. My plan for this community, one of the greatest priorities of mine, is to improve our public schools, get our public schools services and programs that are not just charters and not just moves towards privatization, but bring us programs and initiatives that will help our children learn. I would like to protect the affordable housing that we already have. We have buildings that have lingered in the TIL program, the tenant interim lease program, for decades, and they have not gotten what they've been promised. We're not going to forget about them, and we're going to hold the city to what they are supposed to be doing for them, protecting our HGSCs, which are our low-income co-ops in our community, and also the fight against the privatization of public housing, which is the last true bastion of real affordable housing in our community. I would like to create more support for small businesses in our community, in the district, and greater opportunities for neighborhood and women entrepreneurs. I'd like to explore the possibility of rent control and subsidy options for new small businesses in the district so that people who exist in the community can benefit as much as those who are coming to the community. We welcome all, but we want to make sure that those who fought and served to preserve this community are able to benefit as much as they should have.
So good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. I think this is an important time in our country and in this election specifically, so I'm definitely humbled that so many people have come out. So thank you for coming. Thank you for moderating, and Pastor Clark for that amazing introduction. Anyone who quotes what Alfred put in my book. So it's definitely an honor to be here. Really briefly, so my legacy of service to Harlem, I am a environmental professor. I am an environmental attorney. I have a fundamental belief that whatever giftings God has given you, and I feel comfortable talking about God since I'm in the house of God on tonight. I'm a licensed minister. I've been preaching with the National Baptist Convention for the last 20 years. So I've always felt like whatever my gifts were, whatever spaces I was placed in, it was my responsibility to give those back to that space. And so when I moved to Harlem almost 2 years ago now, I immediately connected with Reid, which is where I initially met Peggy and worked with Sharonda Williams there on crafting some policies for a faith-based organizations that really wanted to look at how they would respond to some of the climate change concerns. I have built that relationship and worked with REACT and Charles Calloway and Cecil and individuals there over the last decade when I founded my nonprofit here in Harlem, Great Community Vision, and we had our first environmental conference at First Lincoln Baptist Church, which is where I attend. Charles Calloway was one of the panel members for that conference, and I was honored to have him participate in that. I also connected with Tony Hillary, which is he's the director of Holland here in Harlem, and I volunteered and worked with him in various capacities, and he was also a part of that environmental conference. And so I sought to utilize my background, my credentials, my skills in educating and empowering other individuals here in Harlem. I think that I am the best candidate for this position because I bring a wealth of experience and I bring a capacity to dig into issues and to do research and to not only identify problems but to identify solutions. That's what I've been trained to do. That's what I do. That's what I'm a professional. So I'm a professor at NYU, and part of what I do is I look at problems and we talk about solutions, and we look at the research that is there to help us craft ideas and policies and really interrogate those things. And so my plan for the next 4 years as city council person here in Harlem is very simple. It's to focus on the ABCs. A, we need more affordable housing. B, we need better schools, and C, we need a cleaner and healthier community. And those will be my 3 priorities as city council person. Thank you.
My name is Marvin, Holland, and the first thing I want to do is thank the Harlem community for the support and the encouragement they've given me over the past year since I've been running for the city council office. So I truly want to thank you, the community, on behalf of my family as well. My wife of 36 years, Carol's here, and my 3 kids who are probably out knocking on some of your doors. So I think the fundamental question we must ask ourselves in this election is, can we make Harlem a zone of opportunity? Can we make Harlem a place where each and every family has a stake in their future? And can we unite Harlem? Doing this journey for the past year, particularly over the summer months, I started doing a live Facebook broadcast, and I really don't even know what Facebook is, to tell you the truth. But my communications director, Emmanuel, had me every Saturday at a small business, and when we had it, we visited a small business, and what we did was we had community leaders come in and talk about issues, whether it was education, whether it was housing, whether it was criminal justice. We talk to people in Harlem about what the issues are that are in Harlem. And the thing that I found out the most was Harlem has the talent and the skill to solve its own problems. We don't have to go outside the community. And the other thing I discovered, and that's why I came up with the idea of putting together an advisory community panel or community council that will help me govern the community. As I meet people from all over the community, whether it's people that are fighting gun violence, whether it's people that are fighting for more affordable housing, what they need is the resources of the city council person so they can accomplish what they're setting out to do. The other thing I discovered was that there was a want for participatory budgeting in Harlem, like nowhere I've seen before, and I've worked all over the city. And what participatory budgeting really is community budgeting. The community wants to have a say in how their resources are spent. And when I become the city councilman, that's exactly what I'll do. I'll make sure the community is part of the process on how we use our resources. So with that, what I'm hoping is that everyone here could join us on our campaign for a new day in Harlem politics. Again, I'm Marvin, Holland, and I'll be talking to you for the rest of the evening. Thank you.
I'm Bill Perkins, and Councilman Bill Perkins at the time. And I want to begin by expressing my appreciation to all of you who are here and those of you who can hear what we're doing for the continued support that you've given me to represent this neighborhood on a variety of levels, and with your support and with your involvement with my office. I'm obviously running for re-election to the City Council. I think I have a wealth of experience in terms of legislation, in terms of how to navigate the political process down at City Hall to be effective on behalf of this community. You know, one of the outrages of this community when I first got started, before I was even ever elected, came to my attention from Cleare because of the lead paint poisoning that was taking place against our children in a lot of these buildings. And we were able, recognizing how significant that problem was in terms of the crippling of our children, to make sure that the city remediated that problem and we no longer use lead paint paint for our property, in our public housing, in our regular housing, and so our children are no longer subject to that potential. That potential, that problem was particularly unique amongst children of color who were living in these apartment buildings where this type of chipping of paint was being digested by them and poisoning them. It was a horrendous, scandalous problem. We were happy to be able to meet it and to overcome it. I want to thank Cleare for her role in playing and with us in making that happen. But you know, today we have additional challenges that are not quite the same from that health point of view. We have challenges related to whether or not you can continue to afford to live in this neighborhood. What's going on in our city right now is making this neighborhood and neighborhoods like this that have been traditional neighborhoods that we can afford increasingly unaffordable, and even the so-called subsidies and whatnot are not even meeting the challenge. So we have a great challenge in front of us. My last minute is to ask you to continue with the leadership that I've been providing. I think we can take us through these dark moments and come out on the other side better than we have been before, but it requires your participation, requires your support, and talking to your neighbors and make sure that the right vote comes out for the right candidate, yours truly, Bill Perkins.
What's up, everybody? My name is Marvin Spruill. I was born and raised in this district. Matter of fact, I was a member of this church. My mother, she used to sing in the Refuge Temple Choir with Bishop Elvana. And my legacy to Harlem basically is helping people succeed. You know, I helped a lot of people get jobs, helped a lot of people get apartments, I helped a lot of people win female district leader. You know, so I basically, you know, I just want to do the right thing for the people of Harlem that defined Harlem in the first place, basically. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just, my 4-year plan is like creating jobs, affordable housing, you know, I want to increase funding for the public schools. I want to desegregate the schools. I want to increase business opportunities. So I just want the best for the people in Harlem, basically.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Julius, and this is why I feel that I'm the best choice to lead this community in the next 4 years as a city council member. For over 16 years, I've been a community leader and have proven not only do I fight hard for Harlem, but I get results. Gentrification is upon us, and the plan for it is to get worse. So, with Harlem's legacy being under attack, the time has come to put this armed forces veteran into the New York City Council. People who know me know there's no question that I have been a tireless, effective community leader, whether it was the time when I served on Community Board 10's Land Use, Housing, and Education Committees, Community Board 9's Steering Committee for Manhattan Bill's Community Benefits Agreement with Columbia University, Frederick Douglass Academy 2's School Leadership Team as its chairman, Wadley High School Campus's leadership team as its co-chairman, or the Harlem Street Merchants Association as its current chairman. I've been a force to be reckoned with. I've stood up to corruption, forcing resignations of corrupt officials or their prosecutions, was a critical advocate in slowing down unfair charter school co-locations in public school buildings throughout the city, and helped the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture obtain one of its most valuable archives. I am that person that people listen to and respect. I've shown that I can successfully negotiate for us and build alliances. This is who we need in City Council fighting for us. Some of the things that I'm known for, as I mentioned about the Schomburg Archive, was the Malcolm X papers, that I helped the family get those papers back, and they're now currently at the Schomburg. I co-founded Harlem for Obama. I orchestrated Barack Obama's visit to the world-famous Apollo Theater in November of 2007. I saved over 30,000 rent-stabilized apartments from being deregulated in 2008 after successfully negotiating with DHCR officials to change its unconstitutional preferential rent policy and save 24,000 public housing residents from losing their apartments in 2010 after forcing NYCHA to scrap an unjust Section 8 program. In 2011, I prevented the Department of Education from closing the Wadley School of the Performing and Visual Arts down, their middle school, and Frederick Douglass Academy Two's middle school. I helped create a community, an ACS partnership in Central Harlem, where members of the community participate in child safety conferences, which has resulted in a reduction of unfair removal of children from their families.
All right,
And
thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Pastor Jack, and I'm a businessman. What I do, well, I am not a politician, right? I come from Holland. I've been in prison, been on drugs. What I do is I help people on drugs. Constantly up at Ready, Willing, Able. I have a business corporation of my own. I put 10,000 people to work every day. I have solutions. I believe I'm the only one. I go into the projects and I get gang members' jobs. I have a friend of mine that he's a warlord. And when there's problems in our home, I go in and I talk to both sides. And deflate. I work along with Harlem Children's Zone. I believe in this week I'm going back to the last prison I was at 12 years ago to let them know that it's life after incarceration and your life will make a difference. I believe in our kids. They have what it takes. If they can take the skills that they have to the corporate world, they'll never look back, right? We have to believe in our own kids.
Harriet Tubman said, she said, I freed hundreds of slaves, but I would have freed hundreds more if they only knew that they were slaves. I believe that this regime that Harlem has been a part of has sold us out. And even if you're coming in, if they sold them out, they'll sell you out too. That's just common sense. If you do the same thing, you'll get the same thing. I believe the man ought to pick his pants up. Not just get a job, do a good job, but also create a job. I go to programs that young people are mandated to by the DA, and I speak about this. I'm a motivational speaker. And this is all come from what I went through. Everything that I went through brought me to this place that I can help somebody else. Every mistake I made was so I can help somebody else. I worked along with a lot of different entities, but I came up with results. I put people to work, and not only do they go to work, they feel better about themselves because they have a job. I also help people, like Mark Twain said, the two greatest days of your life, the day you was born, the day you find out why you was born. I help our young people find out how they was born, why they were born. This is what I do. This is what I bring to the table. Last, I'm building housing. I'm building housing. Because if we don't do it for ourselves, nobody will. I got the property, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm Pastor Jack Royster.
My question, we've been faced with an affordable housing crisis. All of the efforts around affordable housing has not resulted in people in Harlem maintaining their homes. With regard to that, we think that there's a crisis in that some of the developers have teamed up with the Real Estate Board of New York, and these backdoor deals are being made, and we see what is called affordable housing has become synonymous with people who are more affluent than the people who live here, ultimately residing in those homes. So my question really is about what is it that we're going to do in City Council office to protect the people who already live here? What are the mechanisms that we're going to put into place so that there is more transparency and that some of this opportunity that exists with these backdoor deals become more transparent and more open to the public? And what are the strategies to strengthen the existing policies that are going to protect affordable housing and prevent some of the threats that we're currently up against?
So I think that when it comes to affordable housing, we have to realize two things that we have to do, right? One, we have to preserve the housing that we currently have. And so we know that over half of all of our affordable housing for New York renters comes through our rent stabilization program. We also know that last year, 30% of those that were evicted from units that had been deregulated out of that program. So we've got to find ways to keep units that are in that program, right? Because we're not placing any new ones in that program. When I worked with Legal Aid Society, I was part of HRP, which is the Human Rights Project. And so part of what we did was ensure that the units that were in that program stayed in that program. 1 minute already, and we haven't even gotten to the development part. But we made sure that the units that were in the program stayed in the program, but we also made sure that the tenants who had been overcharged for rent were given back the rent. We prosecuted cases and ensured that landlords follow proper procedures and proper protocols. And so first thing is we need to preserve rent stabilization. The second thing we need to do is we need to develop low-income housing. So a lot of times when we talk about developments, we talk about affordable housing. The 80-20 program with the 421A tax exemption, but we know that that program does not provide enough housing for the individuals that need housing, and it's overpriced for the individuals that live in Harlem, specifically where our annual income yearly is $42,000 a year. So we need to invest in mixed income housing and housing that would be affordable for our residents. Thank you.
I think one of the things that's the biggest problem we're having around the issue of housing in Harlem is that we're only talking about affordable housing and not affordable home ownership. And if people in Harlem are just going to become renters, then the gentrification is going to continue to happen. One of the things we can do is that using the HDFC program, for instance, having our cooperatives, because that's usually the first step into home ownership, is to having the HDFCs buy cooperatively. Again, this is a plan to unite Harlem, to bring Harlem together. Could you imagine if all the HDFCs was buying heat or building supplies or whatever they needed collectively instead of as individual buildings, how much power we would have as a community in Harlem to purchase things? One of the other things that's driving the affordable housing crisis in Harlem is the very rezoning processes that they use. So that's why I came out quickly against the rezoning of East Harlem, because that would lead to more people getting pushed out. It would lead to more gentrification. The rezoning and the way the mayor is doing his housing plan is helping to drive people away out of their homes. So we have to come up with a new plan on how we're going to do affordable housing, but we must include affordable home ownership inside that as the plan. Thank you.
We come from a history in this city in which this crisis was around before. In response to that crisis then, it's not altogether unrelated to the type of response we need now. Raise your hand if you've ever heard the term rent control. Well, did that help? It sure did. Because what it did was it froze rents in such a way that folks could stay in their apartments and not have to be running back and forth to 111 Center Street to housing court because they couldn't afford the rent. Once we went from rent control to something that might be now called rent stabilization or some other such characterization, we took the cap off and began to restructure rents in people's apartments, not with respect to what was in their pockets, of course, unless they had a subsidy, but more with respect to what the market would bear. And when a community gets hot like Harlem, the market gets hot and becomes highly unaffordable. So we need to make sure that we have in play rent control type mechanisms such that folks can manage to afford to live in their homes in accordance to what's in their pockets. We should not be having housing policies that open the door to certain type of speculation and opportunities for those who are better off, and then evict or somehow get rid of those who are not so well off. So I'm for going back to go forward in the sense of putting those mechanisms in place that guarantee that people will live in a community that they can afford to live in. Thank you so much.
Basically, I agree with everything they said. I think that we should bring in developers, like nonprofit developers, maybe, and when they do that 80-20 thing, it should be 80% low income instead of, market income. You know what I'm saying? So, I basically agree with what everybody said, and I want everybody to be able to live in Harlem, especially the people that define Harlem who lived here in the past that got pushed out. You know what I'm saying? So, that's about it.
One of the things that I and two other Harlem advocates did to address the affordable housing issue, I see one of my advocates in the audience, back in 2006, was come up with the concept of income-targeted housing, which is that if you're going to bring development, you need this community for land or more bulk and density, and you're coming to us. And so you're going to target the relevant income brackets within our community, not just come with an AMI number, but really address the relevant income brackets. However, that concept is kind of dated now. The narrative has to be rewritten. And so what I'm doing now, I'm pushing this concept, and if I do become city council, I will do everything in my power to not let any housing development that needs city approval come into my district that will outpace moderate and low-income housing. That's the problem. They come in with an 80-20 scheme, a 75-25 scheme, but they're coming in 80 luxury housing, 75 luxury housing. The days are just numbered if you keep on allowing that housing scheme to happen. And so, back in 2006, I did introduce this housing model. It's the 50-30-20. It's an alternative to the 80-20 and the 75-25. 15% will be luxury housing, middle income, 30% moderate income, and 20% low income. That's the most sensible housing scheme that you can find, and that's what we need in this community.
My campaign is based on us taking our power back, becoming a part of the political will so that the power stop busting us in the head. You can understand and know already that gentrification is here. There ain't no way to move it around. We have to come together as a people. Get our own programs. Stop waiting for them to take care of us. We have potential in ourselves. I'm not waiting for 40 acres in a mule I drive a Jag. But what I'm saying is, we have to use what we got to get what we want. We understand, and I'm going to say this, Democrats have sold us out. This has been something that they just did. And it was strategic. You know, they had a strategy for it. They put certain buildings around in our neighborhood that went from 400,000 to 600,000. Automatic, brought up market value. Now Harlem is prime real estate. It's public knowledge they took the money from the developers. If we keep doing and voting for these same people, what have you done for us lately? So what you gonna do for us now? Stop smiling and hitting us with that same old crap job, you know, that make us seem like we don't know what you're doing. We know what you're doing. And with that, thank you for letting me speak.
I agree with most of what has been said. I think the question is how we are going to protect affordable housing and create affordable housing in our community. One of the things that I think is observed is that we're using valuable housing dollars to build more shelters instead of using those dollars to build affordable housing for the homeless. The question described us as being in a housing crisis. And when you're in a housing crisis, you put a moratorium on luxury housing. Okay, you create the housing that the people need in this community. This is something I'm very passionate about because where there's a political will, there is a way. They find money for whatever they think is important. Number three, as legislators, as a city council member, I will resist the policies coming out of Washington from number 45 that are cutting our HUD funding and our Section 8 needs to be opened up. We have to provide subsidies for our, I see the time, we have to provide subsidies for our communities. And in addition to that, we cannot allow what has happened in this community as far as Section 8 vouchers are concerned, but we have so many landlords that won't even take it. And that should not occur. If you get money from this government in any way, if you get any kind of benefit, any kind of, it's a privilege to build in Harlem, then you need to take Section 8 because that's what many of our residents have and need in order to be able to afford to live here. As far as protecting Harlem, the name was created by someone else, but the character was defined by the people who live here. And we have to make sure that attempts from realtors and others to rebrand this community and name it something else simply for greed and lust, and so that they can make more profit, we have to stop that. It's not cute, it's not funny, and we don't like it. We are Harlem, we are not Soho.
We are moving to criminal justice, and I'd like to invite Edwin Alameda of St. Charles Borromeo and Resurrection Church to come up and address us.
Good evening all. My name is Edwin Alameda. I am a Latino man and I'm a resident of Harlem for the last 20 years. I'm also a registered voter. My question regards criminal justice and it reads as follows. While criminal and overall number of NYPD low-level arrests are down, many in this neighborhood, especially black and brown youth, report experiencing tensions and racial disparities in policing. The policy of broken windows policing or targeting groups with different penalties for low-level crimes exacerbates these tensions and increases incarceration rates in our community and also causes deportation in our immigrant communities. As council members, how would you improve relationships between the community and the police? And what specific policies would you pass to address citywide racial disparities that play a role in maintaining inequality, incarceration, and deportation? Thank you.
Well, first of all, I would support the Right to Know Act that they've been trying to get through the council for a while and do everything I can to get rid of broken windows. But I think maybe even more important than that is to understand that the role the councilman can play in policing in Harlem. Just a real quick story. Saturday I was at a block party that was for a Stop the Violence block party. But they were not allowed to get the permit from the precinct because of something that had happened in the previous year. So right off the bat, that's bad policing, police work if you're not going to let someone have a Stop the Violence. But even more important than that, during this event, I was with Nikki Charles, 140th Street Block Association, and Fred Wilson, and the police came up, and you could feel the tension change. There were 3 officers who came up. You could feel the tension change. And it was a very festive event, it became a very tense event. And what the police didn't understand, that these were community leaders that were doing a back-to-school event for the people of the community. So the first thing I think has to happen in Harlem is that the council person, if I'm the council person, I'm going to go to every police commander and make sure there's a relationship between him and the organic community leaders in Harlem. I think that would go a long way toward stopping a lot of the tension that we have in Harlem. In addition to that, I will be the broker of those meetings. I will be the glue in those meetings. Because too many times, the only time you hear from elected officials is when the police do something or when somebody in the community does something. There should be a community council person who's talking to the precincts and talking to the leaders in the community, and I think that's the way we can slow down some of the things that are happening in the community. Thank you.
Good idea. I pretty much agree with some of what my colleague just said. However, I think fundamentally the person in charge of the police is the mayor, and the mayor has to make sure that the person that is appointed to head up the police in our city is someone that's responsive and understanding of the needs of, especially communities of color, because the history has been one in which our communities have been victimized by bad policing. So I think a lot of pressure has to stay on the mayor, because ultimately it's his accountability, it's his police chief, it's his police department, and as the mayor goes, so will that department, and so will their respect for this community.
Well, first we gotta kind of like diversify the personnel to improve community relations. We gotta get rid of the Broken Windows Act, and I support the Right to Know Act. We need to just train these officers to be a little more comfortable and a little more sensitive to residents in our neighborhoods. As far as the policy goes, I would like to have police officers live within like a five-mile radius of where their precinct assignment is. You know, so they can get, you know, used to our culture. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're not around us, then you don't know how we interact. So, that's it.
I've already come up with something to address this issue. I remember when I ran for City Council in 2009, and one of the promises I made if I got elected was to address the police and community relations. But I'm a firm believer of the fierce urgency of now. I couldn't wait to be elected into office to do something about it. So I came up with this community policing program. And I'm going to tell you something. Here, the NYPD has accepted this program citywide. They are aggressively engaging community components to come up with innovative and intimate strategies for communities to police their own neighborhoods. And they call this strategy building the block. So, in the 2-8 precinct, this is working. Tamara Martin is someone in the audience. She can bear witness to this, that you got the power to police your own neighborhood. I would never write up a program where I'm giving my power to police or to any other government entity. I believe in self-determination. And so when I come up with anything, I'm always about self-determination. And so when I wrote up this community policing program, I wasn't trying to placate anybody. This was giving the community the power to police themselves. And for the NYPD to accept this program, you know, there's no excuse now. You got the ability and the power to come up with your NCO officers at your local precinct, and you come up with innovative and intimate strategies on how you want your community policed. Plain and simple.
As I said before, I do things now. So I did a peace march through Harlem with the Bloods and the Crips. Also at the church, I brought a bunch of different young people, gang members together. And the police was there, and they got to talk to each other. I believe in that we ought to police our own kids. I do not go along with it. I have a child living in my house, eating my food, wearing my clothes, and got a Uzi under the bed. I'm gonna go in the room and see what's in my house, because I pay the rent. So I believe we ought to police our own kids. We need to stop being scared of our kids. They're ours. And I say that because I was a bad kid. I was. I got a lot of felonies and I did a bunch of stuff. But thank God I ain't what I used to be, And because of the knowledge of what I had, I'm able to talk to young people, right? AMI is talking about that. That does not work. Because once the AMI takes in 5 different districts, right? And once you go to Manhattan, in Lower Manhattan, downtown, you got millionaires and billionaires. So, certain things like that, it ain't gonna come out. Because affordable housing, if you make $50,000, right? Low income is $27,000 to $30,000. It's not for a lot of us in this neighborhood. I'm saying we gotta take our power back and do it for ourselves, right? We can put our little bit of money together and do something for ourselves. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Cordell.
I agree with much of what's been said. I am against the broken windows policing. But I also believe that when there's no justice, there's no peace. And I think that bad actors have to be prosecuted. The question asked, how do we increase trust between the police and the community? We have to trust that if you break the law, you will be prosecuted. If you choke a man to death that said, I can't breathe 11 times, you should go to jail. We have to get rid of racist and over-aggressive police in our community. It's not in our minds. We're not making it up. And there's no amount of training that can get rid of racism in people. And when we find that to be the case, we have to talk about it, identify it, and get rid of it. We also have to stop the selective policing that sometimes now occurs in our community. Police are here to protect all of us. I've been living here long enough to remember when police didn't come, when you called them. You had to tell them that something happened to somebody who was Caucasian or make up something in order for them to respond. We want them to respond to everybody all the time, the same way. So when you see police pull up here, sometimes our community does get tense because often it's going to end badly for us. And that has to stop. I agree with the right to know. I also think that we have to deal with bail assistance. These bails are set for crimes that families cannot afford to get their family members out of jail until a trial. And the trials take so long, we do have to increase the time speed with which trials happen. And we do have to be mindful of information that is shared with ICE and immigration so that we don't get people deported for simple low-level crimes.
So there was a study that was published last year, and the study looked at arrests or ticketing between 2002 and 2015 in New York City. And the study found that 81% of those that were ticketed were black and brown individuals. And so we know that the disproportionate and prejudicial application of the law is a real thing that happens here in New York. And we know that there are a lot of black and brown men and women who walk around with a very visceral response to the police as a result. I often tell people I've been to 54 countries and people ask me, are you ever afraid when you go to other countries? And I tell them, there are times when I feel safer in other countries and I walk down the subway with a backpack and I see a police officer and there is a knee-jerk fear that I'm going to be somehow harassed. and I'm a professor at NYU. And so that's a very real thing, and I think that if we're going to address that, we have to do it on two fronts. One, we have to deal with better relationships, and so we need more national night outs, and we need more ride-along programs, and we need to build relationships and community policing that individuals on the panel have already referenced. But we also need to make sure that the laws that are in place are being followed. In 2014, we passed some of the most comprehensive legal reform in New York City, the Community Safety Act, which is intended to end stop and frisk, to end discrimination and racial profiling. It's intended to ensure that police officers have to identify themselves and tell you why they are detaining you, if they detain you. It's supposed to set up an interagency working group that gives external review of police officer decisions and arrests. And we need that information to be public. We need it to be visible and transparent, so we know who is being arrested, who's being targeted, and what charges are being filed. That needs to be done.
Our next question is on climate and health, and that will be asked by Diana Blackwell.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for allowing me to come here and ask my question. I'm going to first just give a little bit of introduction about me, and then I'm going to proceed with a statement and a question. I'm here because I have such a passion for Harlem and its people. And when I give my little introduction, you're going to see why. Again, my name is Diana Blackwell, and I'm here not just because I'm a Harlemite, but as a concerned and active resident of Harlem. And I say this because I'm president of a NYCHA development. I'm PSA 6 Community Council president. I'm a member of WEAC for Environmental Justice, and I'm a team leader at my CERT. That's the passion I have. So when I say what I say, such as the state of this low and socio-economic community is a big concern, you'll understand where I'm coming from. My question on climate change begins with, in the United States, heat is the leading weather-related killer. In New York City, recent studies have found that the census tracts with high proportions of communities of color and economically constrained populations tend to have relatively high levels of heat-related mortality. As we continue to face a climate crisis, my question is, what policy solutions will you lead at the City Council to mitigate the urban heat island effect for those most vulnerable in the districts and other environmental justice communities? Thank you.
We'll begin with Councilman Perkins.
This is a very challenging question, but I think we have the capacity within our city government and in cooperation with other levels of government to address it. Clearly, above and beyond our control, climate is changing, and those of us who live in urban areas, especially contained urban areas like the Holland of this city or the Holland of this country, are perhaps being affected more dramatically and drastically than other areas. So we have to look to new technologies for the sake of providing people with the kind of relief in terms of quality of the air, in terms of quality of the way in which our properties are built, where we live. And I don't think that we've yet begun to develop that technology so that it can be employed in the kind of massive way that is necessary. So it's a great challenge, and it's a very important challenge that those of us who have the privilege of being in government need to begin to face. But I would dare say, with all due respect, that much of this is going to have to be done in cooperation with some federal initiatives that can be translated into local localities, in terms of our communities, in terms of our cities. And I think we have a history in this country that recognizes that role of the federal government in cooperation with what we can do on the local level has proven to be effective in the past.
So you want to know about the policies, right? Policy solutions? Well, the policy solution I would implement, I guess for the buildings, for the housing, would be like reflective and vegetated green roofs. for the buildings, and we can install central air so the residents can control the temperature of their apartments. Another strategy is planting like trees around the neighborhoods, stuff like that. I would have to like do some research on that. Thank you.
Over construction is related to this heat island index. It exacerbates this heat island index. And so you have, when developers come in, and they're coming in at such a fast rate, you'll have maybe 1 block or 2 blocks excessive development going on. So as a city council member, I would push for a law that would not allow a certain amount, I mean just any amount of construction to go on in a particular neighborhood. It would have to be, the heat index would have to be factored in. So as an example, if you had maybe in a half square mile radius, maybe only 2 construction jobs could go on. So we can measure this, we have the technology to measure this, the heat index, and so we can solve this problem on a city council level just by passing a law that will put that under control.
I'm not going to just tell you all anything. I don't know too much about this, so I'm not going to say a bunch of stuff about something I don't know. I have to look into it further and talk to those that really do know. You know, one thing I didn't get to say was, you know, here in Harlem, they have that thing, Black Lives Matter. But I wish Black Lives Matter to black people. Good one. You know, we jump up and run when police brutality, but nobody brutalized us more than we brutalized.
Very good, very good,
We
very
won,
good.
you know. And so what I'm saying is, we have to rearrange and reinvent ourselves. And this is our problem. We're our problem, but we're also our solution. We know what goes on in our neighborhood, and we know how to change it, because these are our people. You know, so I'm not going to talk too much about that, but I would look into it. But I don't want to say it or babble on about something that I don't know. Thank you.
Obviously, we do need to have more vegetation. More green roofs are important. We need to do that. We need more trees on our streets and in open spaces. I think we should provide incentives for private developers and private landlords to create more trees on their private spaces. Environmentally, that will just help us. But more immediately, you know, to deal with the mortality issues related to heat in our community, we need more cooling centers. We absolutely need a monitoring and maintaining of the cooling centers we already have. I was in a senior citizen community room the other day with no air, in a basement with no air. And I think that's ridiculous. They said it had been broken for 2 months. So we have to make sure that we monitor that. And also, you know, air it's costly to get air sometimes. And I know that a lot of our most vulnerable people would need some assistance with the cooling units. And we should provide that. We have a program that assists people with heating costs. We should do something similar for cooling costs because it does take electricity. There are also charges related to housing. Landlords charge you to have air conditioners. So we have to make sure that we're not putting people in a place where they can't afford to be cool and it ultimately costs them their lives.
So I think this is a very important question, and I actually would like to be on the committee for environmental protection if I'm elected to city council, because I think that this is something that we have to begin to deal with on a very localized level. So I disagree with Councilman Perkins. I don't think we can wait on the federal government. We know now that we have a president who has put over the EPA, someone who doesn't even believe in climate change. And so we have to install policies here in New York State that are going to benefit our constituents, specifically because we know that low-income minority communities are oftentimes disproportionately affected by environmental harms and environmental burdens. Fortunately, this year, we were able to pass City Council some of the most comprehensive environmental justice legislation, which mirrors Executive Order 1298, which President Clinton put in place in 1998. And so, so President Clinton put in place. And so what we know is that that legislation provides for the same type of environmental justice protections that are provided on the federal level that aren't being mediated right now. Also, there is a legislation that is up for discussion in the City Council, Intro 1629, and that actually looks at the energy policies that pertains to buildings. So I also disagree with Tajiddin that I don't think that having buildings spread out a couple of meters is going to affect heating in Manhattan. We know that heating is a result of climate change with it anthropogenically caused, and the only way we affect that is we affect pollution. So 75% of pollution comes from buildings. If we put in policies that require buildings to be LEED certified, have energy restrictions, then we minimize the pollution, we minimize the climate change effects, and it's only a matter of time before we're facing another Hurricane Sandy, a Hurricane Irma. So we're going to be in a similar situation, and we need to prepare in advance. We need to have.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Bishop James I. Clark Jr. I'm the senior pastor of Christ Temple of the Apostolic Faith and presiding bishop of the Churches of our Lord Jesus Christ, and I have been asked to give a faith reflection as we commence this day of questions and answers that are so critical at this time when we're going to make some of the most important decisions we've made in a very long time.
So we're going to start with the opening question, and we're starting with Cordell Cleare. What is your legacy of service to Harlem? Why are you the best candidate for City Council? And what are your primary goals as City Council member for Harlem in the next 4 years? No more than 3 minutes for the response.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My legacy to Harlem is one of a resident and community organizer and advocate for over 25 years in this community. I served on the District 3 School Board for over 8 years, and then on the Community Education Councils for another 2 years, advocating for better student outcomes for our children and making all schools quality schools, not just those below 110th Street and in other neighborhoods. I fought against co-locations and school closings in this district, fought for greater access to higher performing schools and equity among all of our schools in the district and citywide. I marched and advocated in support of the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, which would bring much needed funds to our district. As a tenant organizer, I participated in the tenant rights movement to protect rent stabilization laws and strengthen protections for children against lead poisoning, fought for repairs and stopped illegal evictions. I did 19 years of constituent services ranging from the uncovering of the HUD 203 case scandal, which began with an illegal eviction, all the way to fighting for justice for the wrongfully incarcerated and wrongfully harmed while incarcerated in this district. My plan for this community, one of the greatest priorities of mine, is to improve our public schools, get our public schools services and programs that are not just charters and not just moves towards privatization, but bring us programs and initiatives that will help our children learn. I would like to protect the affordable housing that we already have. We have buildings that have lingered in the TIL program, the tenant interim lease program, for decades, and they have not gotten what they've been promised. We're not going to forget about them, and we're going to hold the city to what they are supposed to be doing for them, protecting our HGFCs, which are our